This is Hannibal from thehannibaltv.com, and today I have a spirit medium. She has psychic abilities. She's also an ET experiencer, and a lot more that we're going to get into today. Jamie Voslove, how are you doing today?
I'm wonderful, Hannibal. How are you?
I'm doing great. The weather's starting to become better here in Canada, so I'm happy about that. Where are you based?
So I'm part-time LA, part-time Kansas City, and right now I'm recording from Denver as I just sort of completed a little unintended extraterrestrial road tour.
Oh, wow. What did that involve?
So you know that we just had the eclipse recently, and I was down in Austin for that. I wanted to be in complete totality. That just felt right to me. So we did that. And then I was just kind of guided to continue on. And so from there, went to a little tiny town not many people have heard of. It's called Marfa, Texas. Are you familiar with Marfa?
No, I've been to Texas, but never there. What's that near?
So Marfa, Texas is in Southwest Texas, and there's something called the Marfa Lights phenomenon. And you may have seen that like on Project Blue Book. I think there was an episode about it, and in other shows and documentaries as well. And so basically, there were or have been these lights that are unexplained that occur in the evenings at a particular time, and they have been, some speculate it is simply car headlights. And to be fair, like some of that has been proven, but there are lights that there's not enough traffic to account for the lights that are present. And so scientifically they have not been able to explain what this phenomenon is. So there's different theories on that, but that was the first stop after the eclipse. Um, so that was pretty interesting. I did witness the lights. I captured them on film. It was something that I had to see and witness. From there, went to Roswell, which I'm sure you're familiar with Roswell.
Oh, yes. Everyone's familiar with, I think, the most famous alleged landing site in the world.
Yeah, of course, of course. So had to stop there, met with some folks, and just kind of checked it out. But I was passing through, and I went on to Santa Fe. And now Santa Fe is not something that you would, uh, potentially think of in the immediate sense as connection with UFOs or extraterrestrials. But this is where it gets a little bit interesting because uh, there is a chapel there. So now we're getting into kind of a religious aspect. But there's a chapel called the Loretto Chapel, and basically these nuns, several years ago, decades ago, they built this chapel and it had two floors, and they couldn't get a staircase built from the first floor to the second floor. So I guess they did this prayer for 9 days, looking for somebody to just kind of show up and build the staircase. And so that actually happened. This person sort of showed up out of nowhere, out of the blue, and built this pretty beautiful spiral staircase, and and then sort of disappeared after that. And the staircase it doesn't have any kind of metal nails or anything like that. It's all built with wood. But the interesting thing about that is they've done testing on the wood, and it's built out of a particular spruce. So that's what the diagnostics tell. But the spruce has not been scientifically proven to exist anywhere in the world ever. And so, as you know, like trees can be thousands of years old, even older. And so, to not have any kind of evidence of that is pretty interesting and profound. So that's kind of a little bit about the tour, and then I kind of continued on to Taos and on to Colorado, where I am now, sort of at the end of the tour.
Anything interesting take place in Roswell? Speaking of Roswell, and what's your theory on what happened there.
Oh, interesting. Um, so I've had, personal ET and UFO experiences. Um, and I haven't channeled anything specific uh, to Roswell one way or the other. But what does come through is that it's very evident that the government has been aware that there are both the existence of UFOs and extraterrestrials. I definitely believe that. It's the evidence of something happening there, and just the amount of witnesses and people that have stepped forward, and the whistleblowers is so overwhelming, and just it's too much to say that, to be in denial, right? That something didn't take place. So it's pretty interesting. The vibe was interesting. The town is sort of, what surprised me is that there were a lot of folks that were believers, of course, and some that had different perceptions. And either way, everybody was in agreement that something definitely did take place, that there was a crash there. And the people that were on sort of the other side that I interviewed, I guess, um, were just, the debate was, is it positive or negative, right? Like, why are the extraterrestrials coming to Earth? So that's what I found interesting. But yes, I definitely think, I mean, without a doubt, we know about UFOs and extraterrestrials, and we've had technology that has advanced, far beyond perhaps what we would have done if we hadn't had access to those advanced materials.
So you mentioned why would they be coming here? You said you're an experiencer yourself. What's your theory on why they're coming here, or are there multiple different races of ETs coming here, all with different reasons?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I do think there are multiple races. My experience has been on the positive side, and I know that there have been some experiencers on, the negative side, or fearful side. Um, but my experiences have been really positive. And one thing that I channeled that was interesting is that, um, I was told that us humans are far more frightening than any ETs that have ever come to Earth, which I found interesting, because of the fact, like, look what we can do to each other as humans. Um, and so that was pretty profound statement that came through. I tend to believe that, at least in my experience, the ETs that I have connected with on the positive side is that we are going through an evolutionary process and kind of ascending to a higher state of consciousness. And as we raise our vibration and get to a certain level of consciousness, we're able to kind of connect in the sort of middle ground. And it's sort of my understanding that the ETs, again, and when I'm talking ET races, the ones that I have the most experience with, I would say, would be Andromedans, Arcturians, and Palladians. Um, but I believe that they are supporting our process. They want to help. They're benevolent, like I said, and they want to sort of see us evolve to a state where it is our birthright to just access unconditional love, and just to feel joy, and sort of move beyond the suffering that has taken place for so long. Um, so my experience, I would say, would be a positive agenda.
How did you have your first experience?
Yeah. So it would have to date back to when I was young. So I'm going to kind of like move back and forth on the timeline. When I was young, I had other paranormal experiences. When my great grandmother died, for instance, I didn't understand as a child death because I could still see her and hear. And so I had, different experiences like that, I would say. And and then I grew up Catholic, so that wasn't well received. And so some of those memories coming in, kind of knowing, who we are, what we're here to do, I sort of shut down, perhaps to trauma as well. And so if we fast forward now in time around, well, actually the exact date, June 21st, summer solstice, 2009. I was in Hilton Head. And this is where I think it's important because, the perspectives I share are going to, you know, challenge or question the beliefs of others per se. And that could lead to sort of a fearful um, perception, which can come off as, defensive, like needing to defend. And that's not what I'm here to do. So when I share this, I want to share that this is my personal belief and perception and experience. And I'm not here to say or to take away other people's truth. So, use your discernment. But the experience that I had was a wave of energy field came over me, and I accessed the energy of unconditional love. I had no shame. I knew that we were all connected. And so, sort of the separation that we experience here was part of the illusion, part of the ego trap. Um, and that, just all of these like sacred geometries were coming up, mathematics, Fibonacci, just that, this is all sort of intertwined. And not only that, that goes back to like, ancient civilizations knew this as well. And so all of that was like in seconds, this download of information and energy. And it was a feeling that this is what we can access. This is what we are moving toward, but we're not there as, we're not there like in our species as current state of humans yet, but we will get there. And so, everything felt very loving, peaceful, joyful. And at that point, I did not have any sort of extraterrestrial or alien or UFO connection that I remembered. And so later I would find that that information sort of was blocked or had a veil over it, just so I can human and live the experience and do what I needed to do until it was the right time. So if you fast forward a little bit, like I went through this sort of awakening experience, if you will. I'm sure, you're familiar with that. There's millions of people that have all experienced something similar. And then I would say, years later, so 2018, I had a star seed awakening. And so when I say star seed, I mean that there are a number of souls that may have had lifetimes outside of Earth. Okay, so other galaxies, other constellations, and when that happened, this is how it happened, basically. So I'm getting into the ET experience. I had just gotten out of a relationship that we would perhaps classify as toxic. And I realized that it was consuming a good amount of my energy. And, to be fair, I was very reactive in the relationship as well. So when I was able to step back from that relationship, find my own space, be in my own energy field, something shifted again for me. And I was just sitting there one night. I mean, I don't know why it happened on this night, but it did. This blue, bald being appeared, humanoid, and it was almost, and so I have to share this too, because as a channeler, As a spirit medium, often we're seeing things with our mind's eye or our third eye. This was with my physical eyes. So I saw this blue being, humanoid being, and I didn't know what it was at first. And I just felt a sense of calm, a sense of peace, a sense of like, something familiar. It felt like home almost. And, it's kind of emotional. And the being didn't speak in words, rather, kind of sent me, it was almost like beaming into my mind this projection of images. And so these images I saw were just about what we're moving through, and it's a sacred dance and sort of evolution, so to speak, and just it showed me a little bit about that. And that was it. Like it wasn't too intense or long or anything like that. And then and so I called somebody because, I couldn't believe, like, and I didn't know what it was. And then so I'm speaking to this person on the phone and explaining what was happening. And the being shows up again while I'm on the phone, and which I thought was interesting. And I was like, okay, this is odd. And didn't say anything, was just present and calm, disappeared again, and then showed up one more time. So there were three times with this particular being. And and so the third time, same kind of thing. It was just present and showing like I am coming in peace, that I'm not like dangerous, just kind of wanting to show you some things, help you remember, that sort of thing. And so at the time, so I worked, before I do what I do now, I worked in the music industry. I did promotions for artists like Avril Lavigne, Jerry Cantrell from Alice in Chains, Radiohead, Dave Matthews. And then I went into consulting in the healthcare. And so I was still working like a normal sort of 9 to 5. And I was at work and just reflecting on this experience, thinking, what the heck was that? And I felt the energy again. I didn't see the being this time, but I just felt the presence. And there was like this kind of ray of energy, and just Andromedan like popped up. That's what I heard, Andromedan. And then that awakened something in me. Like all of a sudden, it helped me remember, oh my gosh, this is like a part of my myself, basically, my soul and purpose and all of that. So long story short, that's the first experience that I had with an extraterrestrial being. Then I put it together. Okay, this was a galactic being. And from there, things started to get really interesting. That's what opened up my channel to this space. I wasn't aware. I didn't have any memories of ETs. I didn't know about a lot of the stuff we talk about now. But it came through my channel. And so I'd write it down in very like cryptic knowledge in fragments of why they were contacting us. And yeah, and just some things that were validating later on. Like one of the messages that came through were circles around the lighthouse. And as you know, there was the instance in the 50s where the UFO lights were seen around the White House. But I didn't know this stuff because I wasn't into any of this back then. So it was interesting. So a lot more information came through, and that could take us down a whole other road. But that was my first experience.
Now you said Andromedans, Pleiadians, and another breed that I don't recall what it was. What do you think that breed was that was contacting you this time, that you had that connection with?
Oh, Arcturians.
Arcturians, okay.
Yep.
I haven't heard of Arcturians or Andromedans. What's the difference between those three races? Could you tell us?
Sure, sure, sure. Um, So Andromeda, oh, that's interesting. So I have to share two, just to be more specific with Andromedan. That being that I came into contact with, I later learned was one of my guides that had been with me since childhood, and actually saved me from a very dangerous situation when I was 6. I had sort of blocked out that memory, but that's why I started in the beginning when I was younger, and then kind of went up, and then going backwards later, finding out, okay, this being, not person, um Patu was the name of the being, had been there. So the Andromedans are 2.5 million light years away in another galaxy, M31, the spiral galaxy, and they're very advanced. So they have advanced technology, um, perhaps like around 35,000 years ahead of ours. And they're very much teachers, coming to kind of share like that about the evolution, because they've done this before, the same thing that we're going through now. And they are very much here to help support us through the process, because they have this sort of memory. Um, the Arcturians come from what's called the Boots constellation. So when they came through to me, again, I should share this too. I was very scared of ETs and aliens growing up, because I blocked this out, and then I saw films like Fire in the Sky. I don't know if you've seen that one, but for
I haven't
everything.
seen it, but I've interviewed Travis Walton, so I'm very familiar with the story.
Yeah. So, and I know like he has, shared more about the experience and had different experiences after that first one. But the way it's portrayed in the film is very frightening. That experience, and that for some reason was ingrained. And then there was, another show that I saw. But anyways, I share that because I want to speak from the perspective of, I wasn't like, oh, how can I, connect with an ET or an alien at the time. And so the Arcturians, how they came to me is once that sort of field opened up and I felt safe enough, because back then I would have been scared shitless, I think, if I would have had this experience. um I had this message that came through, and I was kind of shown visually this constellation that looked like a kite. And I was sort of taken up to this place, and it was sort of like this magenta pink color, and there were lots of crystals. They looked like either clear quartz, I guess you could almost say maybe rose quartz, because of the like pinkish tone or color. But it was just, I felt like, again, this peace and this love energy, and it felt like I just had to have a high vibration to kind of stay in that place, and I don't think I did at the time. And I couldn't really stay in that presence long. But it was just a message of, again, we're here to support you, you're not alone. And I'll get into this later, but I think that there will be an event that's coming up. But yeah, so the Arcturians come from the Boot constellation. The star is Arcturus, and they're also very ancient and advanced and benevolent, and here to help us. And then the other one was the Palladians. So same thing. The Pleiades is also known as the Seven Sisters, and they're sort of, and I feel like Dan probably talked a little bit about this when you interviewed him, but like Nordic looking, and also very benevolent. They're very advanced too in their healing technologies. And I've had an experience with that where had I've had a physical injury healed by them, which I can share if you would like. But same thing.
Yes, yes, please do. And he did. I can't remember if it was Dan, but we've definitely heard that in some cases they do heal injuries, and in others, unfortunately, I don't know if what breed it is, but sometimes when performing whatever procedures, like in Whitley Strieber's case, supposedly he had an anal tear, but in other cases, Travis, they said too, he said they may have taken him aboard because he touched the saucer and it sent him flying, and he said later he may have been taken aboard to save him, so definitely I'm interested in hearing, what you have to say.
Sure, sure. Yeah, and like I said, my experiences have been positive. I've seen UFOs and everything, but what happened with my experience was so after the Andromedan experience, after the Arcturian experience, which was like I said is more holographic. um I am a brown belt ninja. I studied ninjutsu. um and my training partner at the time was this huge dude, over 6 foot, and I'm 5'5", and we were training out in the park, and we were doing these moves. He landed on me and crushed my ankle, landed right on my ankle, and he felt really bad. But I was like, it instantly was swollen. It was the size of a tennis ball. It was growing like blue and dark purple in color. And I was like, shoot, I have an injury on my ankle. And so I still was like, maybe it can be all right, or maybe it's not broken, maybe it's just like a sprain. And I happened to take a picture and send it to my sister. And I was like, I just injured myself. What do you think? And as soon as I sent that text, I felt this Palladian energy, and well, I don't want to say I knew it was Palladian at first. I just felt this energy come over, and almost like an intercom. Heard, "You're all right. You're already healed. This is the Palladians." And I don't know, like I felt like I believe that at the time I felt like that there was a ship maybe overhead. I didn't witness it or see it, but like a sense. And so, anyways, right after that happened, and I have the pictures to prove it with time stamps. Not that, I already believe what I believe, so that's all good. But um, my ankle, I looked at my ankle, and it started reversing in size instantly. And this is like between the time that I sent the text and the time that it went all the way down was less than 5 minutes. And it started reversing, and it went down to like and I still have this today. It's just a very tiny purple mark. And that's what it did right before my eyes. I could not believe it. And sometimes, and as often as these kind of experiences happen in my world, it still feels unbelievable, at the time. So I took a picture and I sent it to my sister, and I said, I guess I'm okay. And she's like, what? Like, are you messing with me? So that was my experience with the Palladians. It was good.
Well, I've been recovering from a shattered heel. If you get in contact with them, please tell them to help me out.
Definitely. For sure. For
As
sure.
as as far as your psychic ability, is it only related to ETs, or is it human related as well?
It's human related. I kind of I'm surrendered to full trust, and so I sort of go where I'm guided to go. But the scope of the abilities, and again, I'm not alone. There's several people that have this, and perhaps all of us do if we can access it. I can channel humans that have passed away and transitioned. Um, I can channel like the angelic realm, I guess we would say, and then also the galactics. And so, how I think of it, and this is sort of interesting, how I think of it is a radio dial, right? And you just tune into a different frequency. And so, there's actually a CIA document by Colonel McDonald from 1983. I believe it's like June 9th or something like that. But you can Google this, and it is on the CIA website. So Colonel McDonald studied this phenomenon, like how can we access other dimensions? And And so what he discovered basically was that our brains tend to filter out anything that's not attuned to our reality. So the way we perceive it, like, I'm perceiving there's a mic in front of me, there's a computer, and that sort of thing. And so, but there could be an ET on a different frequency interdimensionally by me, and I might not be tuned into that. And so they call it the gateway process. And what they found was that with different sound frequency, it can balance out your left and right hemisphere of the brain. And if they can get to this certain level, then you can connect with higher frequencies and different energy fields. And so if you think about it, if you have a fan, like a ceiling fan, and that's turned on, but it's going really, really fast, then sometimes you can't see the blades because they're moving too fast. So that's kind of the same thing with the dimensions, is that they're all around us, this unseen world, but we're not always tapped into that frequency. So I thought that was interesting that the CIA actually studies this phenomenon and has been doing so for years, in addition to things like remote viewing.
Yeah, I've heard of remote viewing for sure. Would you ever work in a domain like that if the CIA asked you to do that type of work, doing it for the government?
That's a very interesting question. I've actually been um, sort of studied by the FBI. I had which, not the CIA, but the FBI. I had when I first started doing what I was doing, um, an agent showed up, which didn't present themselves as such. But I was doing energy healing at the time with a combination of reading the energy field and sharing what I what I was picking up on. And so her instructions were to not to reveal this up front, but if I tapped into it, it would be okay to share that information. And so I did. And I ended up moving. And she sort of said, she contacted me again, and sort of said she would be in touch, but we didn't have a conversation about would I work for them. I just got the sense that they were somehow interested in sort of examining these abilities. And my perspective is, because there has been some information that has come up, but I feel like what I'm tapping into might be something that the government doesn't want disclosed to the public. For instance, information about what's going on the far side of the moon. And that's something that's come through my channel. And so I feel like I wouldn't want to necessarily focus my energy on that field unless I was completely confident that it was for the highest and greatest good of the rest of the population of humanity. And there wasn't any kind of, hidden agenda there.
Yeah, I haven't heard much about this other side of the moon thing, but I have heard Robert Bigelow, the multi-billionaire researcher, talk about how we should be more concerned about the moon because like Russia and China are kind of taking over the moon and it's not something that we're paying that much attention to. Could you talk to us a little bit about the moon?
Yeah, absolutely. So I, again, so I have on my Instagram, the Starseed Shaman. In my highlights, there is this book that I don't sell it because it's just cryptic channeled information that occurred right when I was tapping into these frequencies. And again, it has taken me years to decode some of this, because I wasn't as familiar with a lot of these concepts and theories that we hear today at the time. And so I kept getting stuff around the far side of the moon or dark side of the moon. It came through my channel as far side, but either way, it's the same thing. And satellites, and it was a question, but it was a feeling that it wasn't like a positive thing occurring. And so I don't know. I can't tell you for sure what it is that's happening, but what I can say is um, interestingly, there's a guy named Billy Carson. I'm not sure if you know him, who owns Forbidden Technologies. Have you heard of him?
No, I think I recognize the name a little bit, but I'm not that familiar with him.
Okay. Yeah, so he's just a wealth of information, and there was this probe called Clementine that we had sent out. US had sent out to get information, and it sort of disappeared around the other side um, of the moon. And he was putting it together because there was that he had that that nursery rhyme in his head about "Oh my darling Clementine, lost and forever" kind of thing. And he had the idea: did that probe ever come back? Was it lost? it just kind of like came into his mind one day, and so he did the research on it and discovered no, it never did come back. So he just, kept thinking about it, like what happened. And so, anyways, he has a group that's been funded to examine the data. And I don't know if it's just public knowledge, these data sets, but they were able to mine the data from this probe and several other missions to look for anomalies. And they did find in this data set this anomaly that pointed to there were structures back there. And so then the question becomes who built the structures, and what are the intentions, and what is actually occurring. And even with Apollo 10, did they perhaps come across anything? So I know that's anticlimactic. I can't give you a definitive answer, but I do feel like we need to have attention there for some reason. And I feel like we're closer to unveiling what that truth is.
Interesting. Someone on here is wondering about if is it possible that alien governments actually don't want their people visiting Earth, but some do anyways for the thrill of it? What do you think of that comment?
Yeah, I mean, I think anything is possible. Um, there could be, sneaky guests, I guess. With I feel like there's been um, I feel like we've been studied, right, in the past, and when we go back to all of these ancient histories, and I believe that there was DNA manipulation at one point. We all of a sudden expanded in our intelligence, and so I do believe in that. Whether or not, or well, I shouldn't say whether or not, but what specific races that would be that wouldn't have that permission, I don't know. I sort of what I'm familiar with is this galactic federation, or how it came through my channel, the United Nation of Stars, which are many races that work together, and almost like they have to be in alignment to come to Earth. So I think it's totally possible, that some can come without permission, maybe, and sneak in here. But I haven't personally had that experience. But great question.
So as far as you said, there might be some stuff going on the moon. As far as bases on Earth, we've heard there could be some underwater, possibly in Antarctica. What do you know about possible bases on Earth, if there are any?
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, we have to look at what the history is of the sky people or star beings coming to Earth, and that dates back forever. And so, there is this lady named Nancy Red Star, and the book is the star ancestors and the connection between Native Americans and extraterrestrials. And so it just speaks to like all the different indigenous tribes that talk about how these sky people came and helped them find their way, and like maybe help them advance somehow with fire, or with crops, or whatever it was with the technology, each depending on which indigenous nation we're talking about. it might be a slightly different experience. But we have a history of that, and then we have the Dogon tribe in Africa, which knew, because the beings came down, that Sirius B existed, which is something you cannot see unless you have a modern telescope. And so this Dogon tribe knew well before astronomers that Sirius B had existed, and they had that drawn out in their cave. And so, again, upon when they were investigated, how did you know this information? That's their answer. They told us, the sky people. Um, so I think that ETs again have been coming to Earth for millennia, forever. And the bases on Earth, what I can say is that, as far as we know, the deepest part of the ocean, what is 6 miles deep, and which is, even if you look at Mount Everest, 5 miles high. So like the deepest part of the ocean is even beyond that. There's so much to explore and so much that we do not know. Um, and so, what I can tell you, more so based on what I've experienced through other people and not through myself, is that there's supposedly an underwater base off of Catalina Island, and that's something that's being studied right now. There's another one that comes up sometimes in channeling, which I'll share, like feels like a little bit like there's a military connection, but that's in Alaska, um, in the mountains of Alaska, like near this place called Hatcher's Pass. And that's all I can really share. Like, I don't know. I honestly, truly do not know specifically through my information as a channeler where exactly these bases are, only like where they may be based upon research, other people's research.
Obviously, there's some scary stuff going on in the world. There's some weird stuff going on with Iran and Israel last weekend. As a channeler, what do you see for the future? Are things going to start to mellow out, or are we in danger here?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So, two things I'll touch on. One is that what's coming through is that there is going to be a major event sometime between September of this year and July of 2025. And I do feel like that is connected to the whole UFO disclosure and the ET space. I feel like there's something, we joke sometimes about the Phoenix lights, right? Like just happening. But something to that effect where more people will be on the side of believing that this is a truth. So I don't know what that is, what that looks like. Sometimes when these things occur and I get a timeline that far in the future, as we get closer to the date, more details come through. The other part, when it comes to what's happening in the world, that goes back to like, that original channeled information about, we have nothing to fear with the ETs, again, at least the ones that I've experienced, because they are here to support and help us. And we are kind of doing these terrible things to ourselves. And that's, an example of it. And so, to answer your question, there's an evolutionary process. I do feel like there's light. I do feel like there's hope, but there might be some more things that need to be unearthed that we need to get through before we sort of arrive. And what they go back to quite often is this principle of as above, as below, where there's acknowledgement that we do need healing, as uh, a global people, but also as an individual people. And if we can sort of focus on that so we can find that inner peace. We can strip the judgments and the fear that sort of control that reality, and not put energy into like perhaps the negative forces that want to keep that in place, because we should have awareness that that does exist. There's, negativity and danger. But if we only focus on that, then that's the reality that will manifest itself. And so, yeah, it's that's part of the process, and part of the work is to fully come into that love and trust, and to see, so not just me sharing, yes, it's a possibility, but for everyone, um, and at least the majority of people to actually believe that. So that's the reality that can manifest itself. But I will say, one other thing is that I have, when I've gone through this process, I've had these memories awaken from the Andromedan galaxy, and there's a parallel Earth, a parallel Earth-like planet that exists, in my opinion, that has gone through the same sort of evolutionary process. And so it is my understanding that that's the timeline we will arrive at, which is going back to this sort of unconditional love and peaceful feeling. But yeah, we have a road to get there.
Yeah, it'd be interesting if there was another Phoenix Lights type case, like if we would still care as humanity about these local Earth wars, if there somehow was a new threat of something like that, even though it might not actually be a threat. But I don't know if we care as much as our about our country to country issues.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a place, that's an opportunity where we can arrive at. But I feel like that's part of my purpose and mission, is to help support a benevolent ET agenda, and not to say that the other side doesn't exist, or that there aren't any negative races, but just that there are forces that are supporting our process and want to see us evolve to that state. And and I think, again, I think that we're totally capable of getting there. And there is, if you're familiar with the law of one, or even if not, I'll share a little bit about that. But there is this interesting um, perspective that they share of the extraterrestrials or galactics can support our process, but they can't intervene, meaning that they can't do the work for us. So they can share technologies, they can share supportive structures and help, but they can't potentially make us like love ourselves and love each other, right? That's something that the onus is on us. The responsibility is on us to get to that place within each other. And again, that's part of our job. But I do think that that we have assistance that we can all tune into.
And do I dare ask if I could get some type of basic reading for myself off of you?
Are you open to doing that live on the air?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, let's do it. Okay. Have your permission? I always ask.
Sure, it can't be worse than anything else out there.
Okay, let me give you a mini read. So, right away, just tapping into a good sort of heart centered consciousness. It does feel like you have a Palladian connection. When I'm going into your energy field and chakra space, it feels like there was quite a, I don't want to say quite a bit, but you had experiences, maybe non-related, non-ET related, but just fearful experiences growing up, and is something that you have been mastering. And so you're very, very strong, of course, very sovereign. But they're showing me root chakra, like you've come a long way in your root chakra healing. They're showing me specific age 7. And so a lot of times my readings will be past, present, future. So that is kind of getting us to present, and they're showing me image of a lotus flower, um, a lotus kind of like coming from the maybe heavier space of this kind of like murky um, mud, but to this like open, clear water energy and beautiful opening and flower, and showing like this gateway um, within you that's opening up. And I keep hearing 2. The number 2 is coming up as significant. So it feels like in terms of time. So I'm getting into months. There's a tremendous leap forward. Okay, so a tremendous leap forward. It feels like in both this expanded consciousness state. So pay attention to dreams, pay attention to signs. Don't question
I've
yourself.
been having some very, very weird dreams lately.
Oh, interesting. So they're already
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah, some negative, some positive, but unusual.
Yeah. So you're moving through. So pay attention, because like some of those vivid dreams, they are can be prophetic, but sometimes they're healing dreams as well. But there's energy that's speaking to you, which is very powerful. And you're tuned in. You're tuned in. I mean, you haven't really shared, whether you are or not, but I can tell that you are, and that's becoming more and more apparent. So 2 months, yeah, like something significant is going to happen, and you'll be asked to kind of take a quantum leap. It feels like, so they're saying like say yes and dive right into opportunities that are presented to you. Um, Golden year coming up. I'm seeing that more of a macro year leading up to it feels more so 2025, but that doesn't mean that there's not abundance in 2024. So yeah, trust yourself.
Very good. I couldn't help but ask that. And as far as where people can follow you and stuff, I know you've got Instagram. Where can people look up more information about you and your
Sure. So
travels?
yep. So my website is Jamie Voss Love, Jamie VOS love.com. And I have information there. I do readings. I do energy sessions, all of that. And also have an app for psychic development and remote viewing. So I can do it one-on-one or through that app. And yeah, and then Instagram at Jamie Voss Love or the Starseed Shaman.
So you have an app, so you think anyone can develop psychic development?
I
Can.
truly do. From my experience, I have not met somebody. The only thing that the challenge that we have sometimes is doubt. We doubt ourselves, or don't believe, what is coming through. We question it, like maybe I'm just making that up. And so I have yet to come across somebody that hasn't been able to tap in. So I don't know otherwise, but could there be somebody that can't? Sure. I just haven't found them yet.
Very good. Well, I appreciate you coming on. Hopefully, we can have you on again because very interesting answers, and we just scratched the surface. But I'll let you close this off with whatever you want to tell the viewers.
Well, thank you again so much. I do have a live podcast. I would love to have you on, Hannibal. Sometimes it's called Starseed Ascension. So we go live tonight every Wednesday at 7 p.m. And to everyone listening out there, I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for keeping an open heart. I know some of these things, may align with what you're feeling, and may contrast with what you're feeling. So just keeping that open heart for truth, and knowing that this doesn't have to mean that you have to change your beliefs, is just a beautiful place to be. So I just want to honor you and thank you for holding this space for me today.